Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to RaceFace.Pro and welcome to round 4 of the EG Evolved ACC GT3 Championship right here at the beautiful circuit of Imola. This 4.9 kilometer circuit is going to test the drivers. 10 right-hand corners with 9 lefts. They're going to be going and keeping the drivers on their feet. And with it being round 4 of the championship, everyone is looking to score as many points as possible. We've reached the halfway mark, and it's time to really see what you can do. A big welcome to everyone out in the virtual grandstands. Wonderful to have you guys around here, as we've got an incredible show for you tonight. Antonio Gamble out in the grandstands. First one to go and shout out Jason Farmer by Boy and Go Griffin Sim Racing, who's had a phenomenal run coming off LMU last night. Jeffrey LaRue had that solid run. He's going to be hoping to make it work. Let's take a quick look at the points as Bego Krobler leads out the pros with Jason Farmer in second place. Herman Whitner, after finding some luck, manages to move up into third on 102 points, while Ruben Heineke and Sean Loureiro hold on for fourth and fifth. Henry Platt finds himself 4 points behind Sean Loureiro. Ulrich Diaga is ahead of Mike LaRue by a single point, and 5 points back from that is Anton Lubbers, followed by Jared Day-Kum. In our Pro-Am, it's incredibly tight. Kieran Harris, top of leaderboard with 110 points, only 8 points away from Jaco Nordia, who holds on to the lead. Chris Biermeister holds on for third, Gerald Pretorius, Alan Patterson, Conrad Martin, Leon Swan, Michael Schultz tied up with Leon Swan in points, and then we've got Jack Darts and Andrew Harris rounding out our top 10 in the Pro-Am. Qualifying is underway and drivers are at the ready to see what they can do. So let's head over trackside and catch up with what's happening in quali. So quick look over. We've got Bego Krobler out on track, looking to make it work as he hopes to stay ahead of Jason Farmer, who chases him down for that second place. 33 cars here tonight, and you'll notice there's a couple of interesting new names coming to it. Sullivan. That's Sullivan, I do apologize, Turu coming in from all the way out of Germany. A returning driver that has been on the mic and now finds himself back into the seat. The Street Monkeys Racing himself, Tristan Herbst, looking to have a bit of fun back onto the track on his return into the world of ACC racing after taking a little bit of a hiatus away from driving. Has been doing a bit of commentating with TGN and Apex. He now finds himself back behind the wheel here at RaceFace.Pro. Top of the leaderboard though in time, has to go currently to the quickest driver out there, and that is Bego Krobler. 142.0 as his best time. Jason Farmer follows with a 142.2, as we do see Tristan going and losing the rear end of that car and finds himself squared into the dirt. Mike LaRue hoping to get a solid qualifying effort this time round, not to have what he had at Hungaroring, where he was too far back in the pack to be able to fight out for that podium. He wants to try and stay at least on that second row. Kieran Harris for the Midnight Racing ZA team, going to be hoping for a solid drive here tonight to maximize the points. Midnight Racing has been showing their hands here and showing that they are quite competitive and wants to keep a very close eye out. Ruben Heineke holds on fifth with Jared Day-Kum. Jaco Nordia, who holds for second place in the championship, will be looking to pull a few points forward. Sean Verfiers will be keeping ahead of Michael Schultz, holding on to that top 10. So far, it has been a stellar run with 142s as an average, the slowest of it coming in from Chris Criff with a 145.3 as his lap time so far. He's going to be hoping to make that work as Henry Platt pushes himself up into second place with a 142.202, with Bego Krobler holding on to a 142 dead. He's going to be trying to find that little bit of room. Farmer finds himself in third place, but it is Kieran Harris who's the fastest in Sector 1, and that is going to be a bit of pressure put onto the drivers to see whether they can make it work here tonight, or are they going to find themselves going and falling down the order. A couple of drivers haven't been able to put a time on the board. Jackie Alberts hoping to get a solid run. The Club Basson for the Alpha 1 Esports team. Veswoda for the Kramadulas. And Rick Thomas Gianluca Pomrosa hoping that he can get a time on the board as he comes out of the final corner. The little right-hand kink does move him up into 14th position, and he will be more than happy. Then we got Sullivan trying to keep his drive alive on debut here at RaceFace.Pro. Trying to keep that solid run. Tristan Herbst picking up the pace, and Lucan Haynes, last of the Racing Snails, trying to find a time on the board. LaRue up into first place with a 141.6 as he kept that solid drive in. Harris 0.2 up on his time, but don't count out Bego Krobler in the Lamborghini, finding himself 0.5 up on his best. So he's really reeling in, trying to see if he can bring it down to that 141 mark. It's been set by LaRue. The question is, will it hold for the qualifying? 8 minutes and 14 seconds to go. A couple of drivers still trying to find that little bit of pace out there. Jason Farmer trying to do everything he can as he heads into Timborello and gets back onto the power out of the second last corner into the final right-hander, which is absolutely flat. Jason Farmer trying to see if he can make up a bit of time here as Bego does take up the top, and Farmer moves up to third with Kieran Harris holding on to that fourth place and holding on to the top 5. He's joined by Michael Schultz into the top 5. Schultz hoping to get a solid run as Henry Platt will be the next one to keep a very close eye on. Harris, though, firing back out the blocks. Fastest in his class and second on the grid at the moment, going and really showing that he can keep up that bit of pace and ultimately stay in for the fight. Not an easy time out there, but most certainly will be one to keep an eye out for the field. A solid run from the competitors thus far, and everyone looking to try to put a time on the board. Tristan Herbst, the only driver yet to put a time on the board, as everyone of our 32 out of the 33 competitors have got a banker lap in. Couple of drivers still trying to find that little bit of time. Jack Darts being exactly one of them for our AM division, our Pro-Am division. He's trying to see if he can find that little bit of pace to his run. Henry Platt moves up with a 141.3 as Jack Darts decides that he's going to pull out of the run. Sean Lorero in 7th position, hoping that he can get a little bit of pace onto the run. So 41 set by our top 9 of our competitors. From there, it's down to 42s from the likes of Michael Schultz in 10th position, all the way down to Chris Piermister in 27th position. He's going to be running the last of the 42s. Rest of the field from there are running 43s. It is absolutely competitive in terms of their qualifying, and each of the drivers trying out something a little bit new here to try and move forward. Is this going to be enough? As Lorero up 0.3 up on his time, giving it a hard push down to the wire. Exits out of the second last corner, flat on the gas. Going to be the long right-hander to carry the momentum through. And he did lose out a little bit of drive, but is it going to be significant to cost him? No, he's going up on his delta and does shoot up to that 6th position, forcing Jack Darts down to Jaco Nadir. Farmer up into 1st. Platt, Bego, Krobler, Kieran Harris, and Mike LaRue hold on to the top 5. With our drivers thinking, what do they need to do to make it work? For Fears in 18th position, jumps up to 60th. Sullivan trying to go and get that little bit of a harder run. And Sullivan throw. Do apologize if I do get that one wrong. But a new driver to the grid. So far 23rd, and opting that he's not improving, so I'd rather wait off to the side. Now, Lucan Haynes holds on to 28th position, and he's currently 0.5 up. He's hoping to try and get into that top 15 and leave Jackie Alberts down at the bottom. Well, he does move up to 25th, but Jackie Alberts gets a solid run as well and manages to shoot up through the order. So don't count out these drivers as yet. They might be at the bottom of the leaderboard for now, but as we've seen, it can quite easily change with Jackie finding himself into 24th position. 33rd, it's Finley Campbell, with Tristan Herbst managing to get down to a 143.6 after a bit of time out of the seat. He's hoping to keep that little bit of pace underneath him to fight out in the Pro-Am class. but Farmer holds the fastest lap time of the race. The Griffin Sim Racing machine not being caught out as he does everything he can to make that little bit of drive. They do see the Ford Mustang of Jaco Nadir pulling off to the right, minding out of the way. Jaco going and having a bit of track awareness out there after making a crucial mistake, decided to stick out of the way for the others to get their qualifying lap times in as quick as they can. Well, he's now going to have to try and really dial it up if he wants to make it work. Conrad Martin comes bailing across the line, 1.6 up on his time, 0.16 up on his time. He manages to move up to 16th position, and what a run on his part thus far. Jackie Albert's 0.8 up on his time. This is the highest of all our drivers thus far with their personal best, and Jackie hoping to get down into the 141s to join the rest of the field, utilizing the tow from Luke and Ains. The Racing Snails playing a little bit of strategy games here to try and move forward, and Jackie's going to come through. He bumps himself up through the order and will be more than happy to find himself with that 141.8 on a solid charge up through the order. So still incredible times being put in by our drivers, but now we're getting into the closing stages of the qualifying, with everyone hoping to find just a little bit of time out here at Imola. This is going to be a difficult circuit to get on past. You're going to have to really dig your heels in to try and find a way to move on forward, to try and stay at the sharp end of the field. This is going to be the moment you think, right, what do we have to do to make it work? Rick Thomas trying to give it everything he can. Unfortunately, he took the curb a little too much and will find himself invalidating his time. And that is how critical it is to move on forward, but also how a simple run through on the curbs can cost you a huge amount. And here in qualifying, it's just a lap time that gets put to one side. But do that in the race 3 times, you will end up getting a drive-through penalty and finding yourself down the order. Finley Gamble trying to get a little bit of a hammer down now in 33rd position. The Pro-Am driver that was fighting out for the ERA Platinum Division now finds himself just managing to move up to 32nd position with a 43.5 in that Ferrari. So Finley Gamble for the 2RD team still trying to find that little bit of pace in the car to see how he can stick in for the fight. Everyone at the moment matching or just slightly over their personal bests, but not significantly by 0.1. That's 0.02 as the quickest one for Joe Bracum at the moment in the McLaren. He's hoping to try and see if he can get that car walking a little bit further up the road. Gerard Pretorius, the Biltong Power Mustang, now finds out he's got a little bit more grunt underneath the hood. Up 0.2 on his personal best. Griffin Sim Racing driver looking to try and see if he can move up into the top 20. Sits in 29th at the moment, and he's getting hunted down by the 7th place Michael Schultz, who is not making it any easier for him. The Hydraulis Engineering now trying to keep a solid run, but trying to see if he can get an improvement on his lap time. In through the chicane, cut it a little bit too much as we see Jared goes off. Michael Schultz, unfortunately, finds himself going and cutting the corner a little too much and unfortunately slowing himself down. Platt holds the fastest lap time, a 141.1, with Jason Farmer, a 141.2. Farmer hoping that he's going to have enough here to really hold the position as he's 0.2 up on his lap time. Platt 0.1 up on his lap time. With the checkered flag coming out and everyone crossing the line now will find themselves losing out that little bit of a run, and we'll have to think, right, what's the game plan for the race? Because where you are is where you're going to start. You're going to have to try and figure out how to usurp those ahead of you and stay ahead of the ones behind you. It is going to be a gambling game here as Jason Farmer, unfortunately, not finding that pace to bring him across the line, not improving, as we do have the likes of Henry Platt still out on track. Alan Patterson for the PWSR now trying his luck at the moment, 0.2 up on his time, along with Sullivan, who is going and giving it everything he can. So a solid run for Alan Patterson. Point 1 does move him up into the top 20 and will hold the line for now. Sullivan hoping to keep the car going out in the McLaren. This is going to be a hard one for the NFBF team, trying to see if he can make it work as he's in 26th position. Comes across the line, maintains, was not able to improve. Vessel Woda currently up on his lap time. We'll be hoping to get a solid run. 0.2 up on his lap, and he does move up to 23rd position. So as our drivers get ready to rock and roll, this is where it's going to get exciting. Here at Imola for round 4 of the EG Evolved GT3 Championship, Season 27, and the second last season here for the entire ACC in RaceFace.Pro. A massive welcome to everyone out in the virtual grandstands. If you're just joining us, we've just moved off our qualifying and we're looking forward to the race. And this is the championship standings at the moment. Bego Krobler holds the lead for the Pro, with Pro going to Kieran Harris. You can see how tight it is in both championships. One little slip, one little mistake will land up with everyone going and running into a bit of trouble. Now, we do have some interesting talking about coming here. We've got Ludwig Zitzman saying he's looking forward to returning to the track next week, much like with our new drivers and returning drivers. It's always wonderful to have them coming back to the championship to slug it out. And the Zitzman brothers looking to really make it work as well. Next week going to be the game plan for them. But that being said, it is 4.9 kilometers long. It is 19 turns total. And it is a circuit that has both fame and infamy. From the death of Senna to some of the greatest championship fights happening around this beautiful circuit. And also has proven to be one at RaceFace.Pro that has flipped the script every single time we've come to it. Not the usual winners and not the usual fighters, but it turns into who can think sideways to try and move forward. They've got 2 mandatory pit stops to serve with 2 classes racing amongst one another. This is going to be an interesting fight. And now reaching the halfway of the season, it's all or nothing for these competitors. Let's head trackside and take a look at our cars. And there they are, lined up on the line, ready to go. Our top 3, Henry Platt, Farmer, Bego Krobler, looking to get a run and move forward. Kieran Harris, who holds on to that 4th position, fastest of the Pro-Am drivers, ahead of Mike LaRue, and Sean Loureiro will be the buffer to him and Michael Schultz. However, as we start to get underway and under racers' orders, let's take a look at the field. It's Henry Platt in first place with Jason Farmer, Bego Krobler, Kieran Harris of the Midnight Racing, followed by the VXR of Mike LaRue. Sean Loureiro holds on for 6th with Michael Schultz of the Hydraulis Engineering in 7th. Jack Dodds for the Rav Mac, along with Jared Raccoon of Team Wolf, looking to try and close the gap to his teammate. John Fafiers finds himself in that top 10. Jaco Nadir, followed by Leclerc Besson, Jackie Alberts, Herman Whitmer, and Ulrich Dialga holds on for that 15th position. Ruben Heineke in 16th with Johan Fafiers looking to join up with the family, and Conrad Martin in your 18th position. 19th is Lucan Haynes, and rounding out your top 20 is going to be Alan Patterson for PWSR. A little bit further down, we've got Harry Duplessis, Rick Thomas, Vessel Woda, Chris Beermister, Gianluca Pombrosa, and one that's starting from the pits. That's Sullivan Tro, who will be starting from the pits. A bit of an interesting call on his part, being Anton Lummers, Christian Zetzman, Tristan Herbst, Chris Kreff, Finley Gamble, and Chris Heineke will find themselves back up through the order and looking to get a run. So an interesting call coming in from our debut driver, but also it's going to be an interesting fight. Herman Webner finds himself in a very, very compromising position of 14th. Trying to fight his way through the field is going to be a nightmare, considering how close he is in the championship points, holding on for 3rd. He's going to have to make this work or face the consequences of dropping down the order. For Henry Platt, so far, he's played to the gamble of the pit stops are going to work out in his favor. Unfortunately, it took one drive-through penalty that got issued out last week. It took him from 3rd place down to 6th, and he's been carrying that little bit of a grudge on getting it, now wanting to right the wrong and see if he can finish out taking the win here at Imola to maximize his points in the championship. Beggar Krobler holds on for 3rd as it's nose to tail. The cars will travel at 70 kilometers an hour, keep within the borders. They'll split side by side, heading 2 by 2 as they start making their way around the 3rd and final section of Imola, and will be aiming for a solid drive here. This is going to be a monumental run for every single one of our competitors, with everyone hoping for a solid drive. This has got to be one of the most stressful moments. Heartbreaking into turn 1, with turn 2 immediately after, meaning if you take your foot off the gas, you're going to land up, falling down the order and falling into a little bit of a problem. So, as the driver's at the ready, hunting down every opportunity, lights will go on, 2 by 2, Platt and Farmer will start out the race. Can they get it done? Can they get the jump on the field? Lights on, lights on, lights on. They're going to come around the short little kink and immediately stare at the posts as it's a flag up in the air. Waiting, and away we go. 1 hour and 20 minutes racing for our round 4 here at Imola. And Henry Platt off to a phenomenal start, getting right off the bat, trying to get away from the field, as we do see Beggar Krobler leaning on Jason Farmer quite a bit, trying to move forward. Mike LaRue getting a solid drive. So far, looking pretty okay. Gerald Torius and Anton Lummers finding themselves coming together. So let's quickly go back and try and figure out what happened, as the two of them were right next to. So we keep an eye on the white Ferrari on the left-hand side of the circuit. That is a solid run for Anton Lummers, who finds himself in a little bit of a nightmare situation heading into turn 1. Late on the brakes, Patterson into the dirt. Oh, it was just a concertina effect. And unfortunately for Anton Lummers, he was caught short-sighted on that one and went straight into the back. Not what he wanted to have, and unfortunately not working out on the run. A few other contacts then happened a little bit further back, and that was with the 37, the 48, the 60, or the 163, the 3 of Herman Wepner, who's one of our championship drivers, a little bit further down the order. Not what you want to see, not what you want to have, not what the driver's expected to have. And let's take a quick look at what happened into it. So we do see Leclerc losing it, and unfortunately that just created a cascading effect as Wepner got impacted as well and got brought down the field. So the starting fact of it was, unfortunately, Leclerc Besson, with nowhere to go, finds himself into the dirt, no control, and thrown down the order, changing up the entire complex of this race. Platt opening up the gap to 1 second over Beggar Krobler, who holds on for 3rd place. Kieran Harris trying to chase him down and seeing if he can move forward at this stage of the game. He leads out his class and will be wanting to make that work every step of the way. Michael Schultz needing to clear past Sean Herrera, and Mike LaRue is going to be seeing for any opportunity to move forward. A couple of pit stops coming into play. Red Heineke, Gianluca Ponrosa, Chris Heineke, Ulrich Dialga, Jackie Alberts, all going and diving into the pits early stages of this race, thinking, right, get it out of the way, get going, and see where we end up. Herman Wepner finds himself in 32nd, as we did have the retirement of Anton Lummers into that concertina effect. Unfortunately, did not keep an eye further up the field and just landed up with quite a variety of cars going and avoiding, but while avoiding, creating contact against one another. Leclerc Besson, part of those little bit of a carnage that happened early on in this race, now trying to see if he can take the fight to Clary Duplessis. And at this stage of the game, going to be a tough one to think about. Down in 20th position, not quite where he wanted to be. and ultimately losing that little bit of time as Mike LaRue clearing past Kieran Harris. He drops down the order. Sean Lerrero is going to be the next car to take a stab and see if he can move on forward to take away that top 5 away from Harris. Right behind him in the Porsche is Michael Schultz. The Hydraulics Racing Machine continues to hold station, continues to see there's an opportunity here, and will need to try and figure out a little bit of time. Tristan Herbst unfortunately finds himself pointing in the wrong direction, clipping over the curbs, and unfortunately a Porsche deciding it's not going to take it, and a fair amount of damage to the nose is not going to help him as well. It's going and thinking, right, what do I need to do to make it work? Jack Darts hoping to move forward on John Fears just ahead of him. He's got Jaco Nadir for a bit of company, chasing down for that 3rd place. The Ford Mustang has been on a solid charge right now, but it's going to be Jack Darts needing to hold the line and see if he can keep himself going that little bit longer. Oh, a little bit of an upset coming out of Michael Schultz as he went a little bit hard on the brakes, had that car snap around him to try and see if he could get past Lerrero, and that ultimately cost him time for Jared McComb to immediately keep a solid drive into the back. Vessel Woda loses the rear end of his car, stopped out on circuit, and is battling to get it restarted. He just gets himself fired up as he finds himself behind his teammate, Kerry Duplessis. Vessel not going to be too happy on that one, but so easy to do on these colder tires. Not quite up to temp where you need them to be right now, but still, the drivers need to push as hard as possible. Finley Gamble, who now finds himself up into 21st position. A second of our cars, unfortunately, retiring. 33 started, we down to 31, and it was due to the vast accidents that happened a little bit earlier that has just turned it all on its head, and looks like it was Herman Whitner who was the next to leave out of the sim. And it's quite a blow for a driver that's fighting up for 3rd place, going to be taking the points, tossing it off to one side, and leaving it there. So there you go, now on a charge. It's all going to be a good run for him and Farmer. Also, for the championship, it starts to liven up a little bit more as Herman going and sacrificing his points standing. Will be thinking, right, what's the game plan? How can I move forward? And where exactly is this going to leave me? Well, for Herman on 102 points, Ruben Heineke, who has an opportunity to move up and see that chance for 3rd place in class. Sean Lerrero as well, holding on to that 5th, will have a chance. Henry Platt is not one to be forgotten about in the fight, as the Kluberson and Tristan Herbst find themselves into the pit lane, getting their first pit stop done and dusted. They have 2 mandatory pit stops that need to be served. Leclerc hoping to get rid of his ones and try and see if he can stay in for the fight as Alan Patterson targets right into the back, and had to careful of a snap oversteer there. Patterson having a little bit of a cross-arm situation, loses out to Rick Thomas, but was able to keep the car pointing dead straight, and now finds himself sitting behind Rick Thomas. The Extreme Sim Racing trying everything he can to get ahead of the Trail Bullets team as they fight it out into the chicane, and it's a solid run for Rick Thomas. For Fears, a little bit less so. Now Alan Patterson right into the back of him, trying to find an opportunity to move forward. A great drive from both competitors thus far, and our drivers now going and taking a look at what they need to do to make it work here tonight, and ultimately where on earth they could stay in for the fight. It's not an easy time for our competitors to keep up the drive, but they will be focusing on what they need to do to make it work here tonight, to move up through the order and also take the fight to the sharp end of the field. Alan Patterson, once again, late on the brakes, over the curbing, loses a bit of time. Immediately for Fears, climbing and trying to see if he can get a better drive over the PWSR driver, as our battle up at the top. Beggar Krubler, Jason Farmer, and Mike LaRue all jostle out for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in class, along with overall. While Kieran Harris finds himself now 0.6 of a second ahead of Sean Lerrero. He's going to be fighting out against a pro, but it's Michael Schultz who needs to turn up the pressure, try and close down that little bit of a run, as 3rd place as well is Jack Darts and Jaco Nadir, who are going to be keeping a bit close for company at this stage of the game, trying to find that little bit of time. Alan hoping he can try and pull himself into that top 4 battle. However, holding on to 5th in class is never going to be easy as he tries to close up the distance to Jean Verfiers up ahead. Down on the brakes, trying to see whether he can get it done. Couldn't quite get the drive out of the chicane. He has to try and figure out if he can keep in that slipstream a little further into the race. So now, as the drivers start to settle down and start to think about the strategy calls coming into play, it's going to be when is the first round of pit stops for majority of the field going to be. And based on what we saw last weekend, it was at the 45-minute mark was the first round of pit stops, with right towards the end was the second, and that was Henry Platt who gambled for that pit stop. So did the likes of Herman Wepner, finding himself a little bit further up the road at Hungaroring, pitted on the last lap and managed to finish out on the podium. So a stellar result on his part. We'll be trying to look for that little bit of a run. Sean Loureiro tried to attack the outside, looks for the cutback on Kieran Harris. He keeps his nose right into it. Unfortunately, couldn't quite get the pass. Now Jared Coombe and Michael Schultz find themselves a little bit closer here and have an opportunity to keep moving on forward. Loureiro keeps the pressure on, looks down the inside line, couldn't quite get it done. Backs out, has to look again. Can't find that little bit of momentum. Every time he takes a stab, he just can't find the drive to work out. Sean Loureiro hunting down an opportunity to move up into that 5th place, but is getting held back by the Pro-Am leader. And now Jared Coombe finds himself in the same situation where he just can't clear on by, but is under pressure in the review mirror from Michael Schultz, who already starts to peer over to the right-hand side. Couldn't quite get it done. And Jared, hoping that he can just keep that little bit of a run, will be hoping for a solid exit as we jump on board the rear wing of Jared Coombe, who decides he's going to get into the pits and leave the fighting for another day. Kieran Harris, however, in the BMW M4 GT3, still has an opportunity here with Sean Loureiro. And we just take a look off the back of these cars. They're trying everything they can. Alan Patterson finds himself into pit lane now, slowing right down before anything. He does not want to be caught up with a speeding penalty in the pits. He wants to try to get that pit stop clean, done, and first one out of the way to reset and refocus for coming up second round of pit stops. Really starting to see drivers taking just fuel, getting themselves sorted, and then focusing on the rest of the race. This is going to be the game plan for a lot of drivers, thinking, right, get a short stop done now and see where you go. Others might be considering a bit of a tyre set change, but with an hour and 8 minutes to go, a little bit early to go for a tyre set change, and is not the most viable of options. However, we have had a couple of drivers pull into the pits. Namely, it was Sven who finds himself going and catching a bit of work to his car, but he came out the pits on the starts, 14 up where he started. Alan Patterson, however, a shocking turn of events, disqualified, and that would be speed way over the speeding limit for the pit lane. So Alan Patterson finds himself disqualified out of the race, and that could only be because he went too fast in the pits, way too fast in or way too fast out, and unfortunately finds himself retiring out of this race, not by his own accord. Mike LaRue getting a little bit squirrely, trying to find out a little bit of time and pace underneath him, sliding around and just not having an easy time, as that Aston Martin really snapping at the heels of Bego Krobler, but just not finding the grip to work it out. Sean Loureiro going to be trying to close up the gap, as they did get past one of our BMWs at the back markers, and I think that is Lucan Haynes. Yes, it is. Lucan Haynes finds himself down the order, getting passed by the leaders as they're already starting to slice through the field, already starting to put a couple of laps on the drivers, and Lucan Haynes has got to keep his head very, very much on a swivel not to get caught up into any strange fights. Jack Dodds giving it everything he can, looks to try and get the run on for Fears. Unfortunately, not to be the case, as they battle their way through. For Fears just keeping on the back of Michael Schultz. It's a bit of follow the leader at the moment for each of our competitors. However, Kieran Harris, who thought he was really home safe after a stellar qualifying, now finds himself the cork in the bottle here with Michael Schultz, second in class, hunting him down and trying to see if he can get that run up through the field. So a monumental need for Michael Schultz to move up, and what better way than to apply that little bit of pressure to the championship leader and see if he can really cause a bit of trouble. John Fears finds himself put into the fight as he's in 8th place and caught behind the front duo of our Pro-Am field, and he's also got Jack Darts for a bit of company on the back of him. That McLaren, not finding that it's missing a step right now, will ultimately think, right, what do we need to do to try and make it work here tonight? The Kluberson keeping the pressure on to Gerard Pretorius, couldn't quite get the pass done, had to wait out that little bit longer and see if he can really just start to feed the power in. Ultimately, this is turning into a monumental fight for our competitors to see what they can do, and absolutely where it's going to be a tough time, as the Kluberson, after early on in the race was far more up the field, now finds himself down the order 12 places from where he started, not having the easiest of runs. Now, we're talking about losing out the most. Jackie Alberts is the one that's lost the most since the start of the race, but it was Sven who started from pit lane, finds himself up 14 positions. Finley Gamble up 13 positions from where he started. Christian Zetzman finds himself in 14th. He's gained 14 positions on his run through, as we did get a yellow flag as Finley Gamble clipped into the dirt, and now immediately it's going to be the likes of Sullivan trying to see for an opportunity to get by. A tough call, a tough race, and a drag race between our two international competitors, with Finley Gamble holding the inside line, is able to move on forward. He does do a little bit of a block pass to try and hold back Sullivan, but not gonna have the easiest time heading into Aqua Morali as they power their way through. He runs out wide immediately. Sullivan gets onto the gas. Finley Gamble loses out a little bit of time. He will also pick up a incident point warning and will be saying, listen, you can only do that 2 more times before you get a penalty handed out to you. Fight back up to the top of the field. Jason Farmer, Bagel Krobler, and Mike LaRue finding themselves in a brawl of note. Ultimately, with the drivers trying to figure out what is going to be the big game plan here, how can they keep moving on forward. 33 cars started, 29 remain, and still the opportunity to maximize points in both championships. Chris Biermester, however, loses the rear end of his car and is out and gone from 13th position. Will start to spiral down the order, losing out to Christian Zetzman, and now having to try and pick up a piece of that race after a little bit of frustration. Yakunadia finds himself holding on to Jack Darts, really trying to push his way forward, and ultimately it's going to be a tough time. It's a drag race for Bego Krobler and Jason Farmer as they come barreling on through. Farmer drops back into third with Mike LaRue hot on his heels, now looking for an opportunity to move forward. And Bego knows, you put these two together, it's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be like setting off fireworks. And for Jason Farmer and Mike LaRue, they've done battle completely in the past and heading out of Hungaroring where they cost each other that second place on the board. Well, LaRue and Farmer will have to think outside the box here and also put differences aside if they want to make it work. Jason Farmer barrels for the inside line, couldn't quite get that done and has to wait out just that little bit longer, seeing what he can do. Jaco Nadir from the top 10 pits in to try and complete the first pit stop. 1 hour and 2 minutes into the left in the race, and so far a great call coming in. Each of the drivers hoping for that little bit more of a push to try and see where they're going to come into play here, but also we're starting to see different ideas coming in for drivers wanting to stay up at the top of the field. Taking a look, it looks like Tristan Herbst unfortunately is another one of our drivers who is out of the running. So Tristan Herbst after making his return, now out of the race, further down, and will be thinking what to do to try and improve. So lost out both of our commentators that do a lot for the world of sim racing, Alan Patterson and Tristan Herbst, unfortunately out of the running here tonight, and will be watching from the virtual pits at all the racing happening out on circuit and cheering out to all the friends out there. Bit of a gut-wrenching blow, that's for certain, and not what we want to see. Drivers not making it to the line. However, it's going to be a mental drive. Herman Whitner with a disconnect, now reconnecting. So it does look like Herman trying his best to get back in, as we do see Ulrich Diaga clearing on by as Leclerc Besson found himself into the dirt. Loses out to Ulrich and Gerald Pretorius, and Leclerc, fortunately, now having to try and close up that 1.1 second gap. Will be trying everything he can to move forward. So take a look to Jason Farmer and jump inside the car. We can see right onto the back of the Lamborghini. It's going to be an absolute chase down into the corner. Through the gears he goes, trying to see if he can find a little bit more grip out there. Not exactly going and finding it the easiest, as Farmer once again applies the pressure to Bego Frobler, trying to see if he can move that Lamborghini offline. However, Bego is not keeping an eye on the mirror. He's keeping an eye on what's ahead of him, and exits and entrances is all what's going through the head. Mike LaRue holds on to the coattails. Jack Darts keeping the close battle to the likes of Michael Schultz as they fight out for second and third in the Pro-Am class. Michael managing to claw his way back into the fight, up into second place. Will be wanting a solid run here tonight to maximize his points in the championship, and if he can take a few away from Kieran Harris, he's going to do exactly that, while Christian Zetzman finds himself fourth in class ahead of Chris Biermeister, Ferry Duplessis, Vesselwoda, Conrad Martin and Sullivan Throw to try and see if he can move on a little bit forward. Herman Whitner resting in the pits, will be released after a bit of time. He will need to try and cycle around to at least go and start scoring some points for the championship to really make it work. Jared McComb finds himself on Sullivan, pushing a little bit harder, but a big call coming in. Mike LaRue first into the pits from our top five. So Platt, Frobler, Farmer, Lorero all start to take a look behind and say, right, what's the big plan on that undercut? And how far are you going to actually drop down the order? Or is it going to be something we need to keep a very close eye out on? So Mike LaRue going to be going for one of his shorter pit stops, hoping that's going to work out for him, as we do see one of the cars venturing out into the dirt, losing out a bit of time there and immediately getting swallowed up, as it's going to be one of our racing snails, unfortunately getting overtaken and absolutely sent on the flambe. And it's the 7 of Lucan Haynes who finds himself going and crop dusting everyone every which way that he can. So, that being said, it's time to take a look at who is where. Henry Platt leads out to Pro Division with Bego Grobler and Jason Farmer holding on to that second place. Sean Lorero holds on to fourth, and running out to top five is going to be Jean Fafiers. Sixth is Rick Thomas, followed by Jan Fafiers. Mike LaRue finds himself after the pit stop in 16th position, but still in the run for the Pro Division. Jared Raccoon a little bit further down. Ruan Heineke, Chris Heineke, Ulrich Diaga, Leclerc Besson, and still waiting to come out, Herman Wepner to come out of the pits. For our Pro-Am division, it's Kieran Harris that leads out the field, 4.9 seconds ahead of Michael Schultz. Jack Darts trying to hold on to that third place. Christian Zetzman up into fourth with Chris Biermeister, Kerry Duplessis, Vessel Woda, Conrad Martin, Sullivan Throw, along with Jaco Nadir, Finley Gamble, Gerald Pretorius, Gianluca Pomarosa holds on a little bit further down. Chris Treff into the pits and loses out the position to Lucan Haynes. But we have got a problem coming in. Biermeister and Duplessis crossing swords with one another and running into a bit of a problem. Let's quickly take a look to the helicam and what happened here, as it was going to be Duplessis looking to try get on by. He goes for the undercut. Unfortunately, understeered, landed up with that light touch against Chris Biermeister that turned him around, and both drivers now having to pick up the pieces of the race just try to see if he could sink it in a little bit deeper to try and get the run. Unfortunately, Chris was there, and that little clip gone and cost both drivers an ample amount of time. And we did see the likes of Vesselwoda cruise on by with these Mercedes after seeing his teammate out into the weeds. Leclerc, after the damage to his Ferrari that he sustained, still continues on the charge behind Gerard Pretorius. He's trying to climb back up through the order as Finley Gamble, next driver to pull into the pits. And we'll be seeing if he can get that undercut to work in his favor to get that first stop clear and see what he can do for the rest of the race. Leading out those who have put in the first pit stop, it's going to be Mike LaRue down in 16th position, who is trying to find out a bit of time here. Jack Darts trying to keep the pressure on the likes of John Fafiers. Fafiers Racing Team putting on a great show. Rick Thomas trying to move on forward. He's got the likes of Jan Fafiers onto the back of him. So the Fafiers family not sticking out of any brawls. They were going elbow to elbow, knees to toes, and will be absolutely pushing everyone to the limit to try and find where can they get that run. As Farmer once again keeping close to Beggar Krobler. They've managed to shake Sean Herrera off their tail, but now these two fighting out for second and third will be waiting on what is the pit stops going to look like. Henry Platt, since getting out the box, has now led out the race every single lap with no one able to fight him, going 7 seconds ahead of Beggar Krobler and Jason Farmer, who still keep the squabble between one another, but will be taking a look further down, as that 16th position is exactly where they need to keep ahead of. Mike LaRue, who has completed his first pit stop and is a viable threat for the championship, will be keeping a solid run as John Fafiers and Rick Thomas have a go. Jack Darts trying to see if he can fight against Jean Fafiers. So Jan Fafiers in for the fight. Jean Fafiers dealing with Jack Darts. And this continues to be a nose to tail, but it's now settled down amongst the entirety of the field. Let's follow the leader, wait for the mistakes to creep in, and ultimately see where you could save. You gotta save on tires, you gotta save on drive, and it's unfortunately Finley Gamble with the stop-go 30-second penalty. However, Herman Wetner finds himself back down the order, but is still circulating out there. He saw the green and now is fighting to see the checkered, and also put a few points out on his plate to go and help out in the championship. Whether it's one, whether it's two, whether it's plenty or more, you gotta try and get towards the end of this race. You've got to try and see it through to ensure that you keep a solid run, as it's a bit of a battle of Jack and John who can't find that way past. Two of them continuing just to take a few stabs at one another, unable to move. Kerry Duplessis and Conrad Martin raced with each other for quite some time. Now know each other's skills. They know what they need to do to fight it out that little bit more. And ideally, this is going to be one that both drivers will be thinking about. What is the strategy called? Are we going to work with one another, or are we going to land up fighting, costing ourselves time, and allowing Chris Biermester to make up that little bit of room? For Kerry, he's hoping to move on forward. The Chromodulis racing machine not having an easy drive out there, continues to apply that pressure, and Conrad Martin, feeling the pressure put onto him, will have to think, what does he need to do? Down the inside, got the pass through the hairpin. Drag race on the way through, both with the V6 turbocharged engines underneath them, continue to battle their way around, and incredibly close, nearly landing up with both drivers door to door, but ultimately it was Conrad Martin who ran out of room, and now immediately it was Harry Duplessis who made the mistake through Acqua Morali. This has allowed Chris Biermester to draw them in a bit closer as Conrad looks for the in pass on the inside. He gets out of shape, over the curb, over the wall, and that is all she wrote as Chris Biermester says thank you. Conrad points the wrong way, toes back to pits. That is going to be Conrad most certainly not enjoying that little bit of a run. He took the dive down the inside, bounced over the curbs, and just by doing that, lightened up the steering, causing it to just lose the rear end and unfortunately finding himself parked behind the barriers, having to tow back to the pits, and will most certainly not be happy with that one. As we keep an eye on Jack Darts trying to move up on the 22 BMW of Jean Fiers. So up and under to get that drive done and dusted. But can Jack utilize a little bit of straight line to help him out? Yes, he does. Sullivan comes into the pits to complete his first pit stop. Mike LaRue up to 15th, is not making the climb he really wants to go here. Finley Gamble with that stop-go 30-second penalty he's trying to shake off is also going to affect him in this race. Chris Krev finds himself completed of all these pit stops down in 26th position, and will be more than happy to just see it through to the very end now, because it is all about keeping it clean. You have no chance to repair your car, put a new set of tires on, or even refuel. So you're taking that gamble for the next 51 minutes to go a little bit long. Our top 14 yet to do their first pit stop, and despite fighting nose to tail with one another, still trying to find that little bit of a run. Sean Fiers unfortunately finding into the dirt as he carried a little too much speed, picked up a bit of understeer, costing him a bit of time, and will be looking forward to seeing what can move him up the order. Jason Farmer returns to keep pressure on Bago Krobler for that second and third in position. Ultimately, this is going to be a fight through and through for both competitors, as they still lose track of Henry Platt further up the road, plus they're having to clear all the traffic that goes on as well just ahead of him. And you can see how Bago Krobler was flashing his lights, busy asking the racing snails to just mine out of the way and see if he can also try and just march his way up through the order. Going to be a difficult one, as it's not Luke Haines that they've caught behind. They're going and finding themselves right behind Jackie Alberts, the 251, hoping to keep that similar drive, keeps to the right-hand side, forces both drivers onto the racing line, and immediately will have the advantage heading into the chicane. Clear running. You could see that little bit of a lift-off helped out both drivers to clear on through without hampering too much of Jackie's race. Kerry Duplessis and Mike LaRue continue on the fight. Both drivers doing everything they can, with Chris Biermeister holding on to that top 15 right behind him. Will be trying to eye out an opportunity here, see if it's going to be a good one, or will he find himself falling down the order, not quite where he wants it to go, and ultimately starting to find that little bit of a drive. These drivers having to really try and figure out what's the game plan, how can they move forward, and where can they make it work for them. However, they do run into a little bit of a case scenario of what's going on and where it may go. Mike LaRue keeps the pressure on, trying to see if he can move on forward with Kerry Duplessis now side by side. LaRue wanting to clear on past and take up that 13th position on his march back up through the order. Remember, he was the first one out of that top 5 battle to pit, and now trying to see how far up the field can he cycle before the first round of pit stops come into play for the top 13 cars. Would have been 14, but unfortunately Kerry Duplessis was not able to hold on to that last rung, and now finds himself just trying to cycle through this race. Henry Platt, Bago Krobler, Jason Farmer hold on to the top 3. Kieran Harris, Michael Schultz and Jack Darts hold on to the top 3 for the Pro-Am. Everyone trying that little bit harder to see if it's gonna work out for them. However, they're not quite finding the pace that will completely separate them from the field. For those that have got a little bit of free air, they'll be switching their focus onto saving a bit of fuel, saving a bit of tires, and ultimately trying to see if they can go that little bit longer into the race. And how exactly is it going to work? A monumental, absolute run, and let's see how the drivers are going to be fighting their way through. Everyone hoping to take on a great run. But ultimately, it's going to be an absolute mad run for the competitors to make it work. Still, the little bit of worry that comes in from each of the drivers is what's going to happen come that first round of pit stops for the top 13. As we now heading towards the halfway mark, we're down to 46 minutes, 45 seconds left of this race. And as you can see, the fight for second is still out on track. And not to go and count out Luke and Haynes from the Racing Snails fighting out against Sullivan, who is, for his first time here at RaceFace.Pro, finds himself in that battle, trying to see if he can pull himself a little bit closer. 33 cars started, and we down to 28 left out on track. Herman Wetner back into the pits. Chris Krief finds himself in 26th, and Jackie Alberts rounds out the pack. But we are already starting to see drivers taking up an interesting run. Wetner, Alberts, Krief, all have done their first pit stops, and Ulrich de Jager will be sorting out his drive. Now, wonder for Chris Krief, because I've seen a couple of his posts that he puts out on social media. Has he refilled his blinker fluid? Anyone wants to ask him that? Ask him if he's refilled his blinker fluid, as he was putting on a bit of a show of how to utilize that indicator. Big look down the inside for both Bego and Jason Farmer to try and clear past one of the Extreme Racing machines and just see if they can open up that gap a little bit more into the race. Farmer in a bit of a desperate move, trying to go for the inside line, ultimately fouled himself up and will be thinking, right, what's the game plan here? How can I get past? And if this is not working for me, where exactly can we get the pass done? The undercut, the overcut, what's going to be the play field here for the field? And Sullivan keeps the pressure on Luke and Haynes, went right over the curbs, both got unsteady and both running into a collision. That was not ideal on both parts, and it looked like a bit of problem coming in for Luke and Haynes, who was a bit slow. He lost out the rear end of his car, snapped to the left and went straight into the side of Sullivan, who also got upset over the curbs, finding himself hard into the wall. Luke and Haynes finds himself into the pits, towed back after that impact, and hopefully they can get that Racing Snail patched up and back out on the circuit, while Sullivan finds himself a little bit further up the field, but will be feeling that that left-hand side not quite as kosher as he would like it to be. The fight out for first in the Pro-Am field starts to heat up as Michael Schultz and Kieran Harris now find the battle between one another, giving her a hard push, trying to see ultimately who's got the better run here as we jump on board with the Porsche. The 992.1 continues to move on forward, but Michael Schultz taking the call to dive into the pits. Harris is going to continue on by, so is Jack Darts. They're going to clear on through. So Michael Schultz taking that opportunity for the top 5 of the Pro-Am to pull into the pits to see if it's going to help him out, as he's just over the halfway mark of this race. He's looking to try and break it as even as possible, but will be keeping a very close eye on what he needs to do to move back up through the field. Mike LaRue is going to be the next one he needs to keep an eye out for, as LaRue in 13th position has completed his first stop and leads out those that have done their first stop. He does clear past Michael Schultz, moves up into 11th position, and now 5 seconds off the back of Vessel Woda, who holds on to that top 10. LaRue trying his utmost best to make it work for him, as Jared McComb finds himself going and having a bit of a scrap with Chris Biermeister. The two drivers ultimately having a monstrous run between one another, and Biermeister continues to see if he can keep that solid charge through the order, while Jared McComb does everything he can to try and get the slipstream, to pull himself a little bit closer and ultimately stay in for the fight. It is going to be a nose-to-tail battle continuing, but Michael Schultz now finds himself leaving pit lane ahead of Gerard Pistorius in that Ford Mustang, but is down the order as Harris holds on to first, Jack Darts into second, Christian Zetzman moved up to third, Vessel Lodo in fourth, Kerry Duplessis in fifth, Chris Biermeister in sixth, seventh is Jaco Nadir, and Michael finds himself now 8th in class, trying to hold on and trying to see if he can keep ahead of Gerard Pretorius. He'll also be concentrating on getting those tyres up to scratch, as he is the very first of the drivers to actually pit. No, it wasn't actually the first. It was the likes of Sean Narero that was the first to put a new set of boots onto his car. So Sean Narero and Michael Schultz, both with a new set of tyres onto their cars, pushing to see if they can run the gauntlet here to move forward. But Christian Zetzman, the hardest charger at the moment, finds himself up 19 positions in this race. Rick Thomas up 15, along with Chris Heineke matching up 15 positions. Then we go down to 13 positions gain. Vessel Woda finds himself in that top 10 and holding on to that 13 position gain. Sullivan Thrall finds himself in up 10 positions, 23rd overall, and still cycling his way into this race. Still trying to see what is going to be the opportune moment to move on forward. Biermester and Jared McComb swapping positions, and now Jared needing to open up the gap to try and see if he can close up to his fellow Team Wolf driver. He will be getting cheered on by his father, hoping that he can keep that solid run. However, it's going to be an all-out pace for these competitors. Jack Darts trying everything he can as Gianluca Pomerosa comes into the pits. Jack Darts trying to close up to Kieran Harris and seeing if he can try and take away that top spot on the podium away from the BMW drivers. Kieran pulls into the pits. Jack Darts immediately follows suit as well, not to be caught out here, and does not want to be fouled up. Christian Zetzman a little too far back to gain any advantage along with Vessel Woda, but it will be the pros that will be more than happy to start taking up the places as Rick Thomas and Jean Verveers manage to gain a bit of time. Jean Verveers also climbs up into the top 6 and leaving the Pro-Ams to fight out with one another, ultimately to see who is going to take this run. 23 laps into this race thus far. Pit stops coming into play. 39 minutes and 50 seconds to go here at Imola for round 4, the EG Evolved GT3 Championship Season 27. And what a season it has become, with everyone hoping to get a solid run. They'll be really looking forward to making it work here tonight. This is going to be a race of the ages, and so far it is going to be our top 7 who have yet to do their first pit stop to get it done, dusted, and cleared out the way. However, it is Jared who comes up ahead of the pack, currently leads out those that have done their first pit stop. So originally we thought Mike LaRue was going to be able to do it. He pulled into the pits, now trying to see final stop out the way, and ultimately see if he can try and bull himself back up through the field. So Jared McComb and Ruan Heineke trying to find himself out there in that 9th position. Holds on for 2nd position. Jaco Nadir holds on to 2nd in the Pro-Am. 38 Ford Mustang not having an easy time, looking to try and keep the points consistent to try and hold that run in the championship. However, he needs to try and get a little bit of a giddy up and move as Mike LaRue coming out of the pits. A big one coming in for LaRue. Unfortunately, a stop-go 30-second penalty for speeding in pit lane, and from what was looking to be a net positive for him to go and finish up into the top 5, unfortunately comes crashing down in a ball of flames. That stop-go 30-second is just by coming off the button a little too early, and finds himself now in a world of trouble as Zetzman and Verveers into the pits. Jared McComb going to stretch his legs, clearing both drivers, and now sets his eyes 26 seconds up the road to Rick Thomas, who holds on to that top 5. John Verveers trying everything he can in 4th place, with Jason Farmer still keeping that pressure on to Bagel Krobler as 2nd and 3rd continue on the fight. Henry Platt leads and is yet to come in for a stop. He will be noticing everyone around him starting to get those pit stops done and dusted to get the first ones out of the way. He does dive into the pits. This is going to be a crucial call for him, as next up is going to be Bagel Krobler and Jason Farmer follow their way through, both diving into pit lane and will look to try and keep that little bit of momentum going. We're wondering how long they can stay out there. Well, for the next 37 minutes, they're going to think about that final pit stop and where exactly it's going to chuck them into the race. Unfortunately, Mike LaRue, who is down in 17th, will run into trouble, and Christian Zetzman gets a stop-go 32nd as well. The bad luck continues for Zetzman. It is just one of those races that doesn't work out for him, and one of the seasons that don't work out. Christian Zetzman has got some of the worst luck I have seen in sim racing for a long time. And ultimately that comes down to getting off the button a little too early or going into the pits a little too fast and finding out that you're just not going to have it work. Jared pulls into the pits to complete his last pit stop, seeing if that's going to help pivot him forward, as Sean Lerrero will be the next one to keep an eye out for there, as Michael Schultz leads out the Pro-Am division with Kieran Harris and Jack Darts finding each other all three in the row. They'll be ultimately thinking what's going to work out for them and how they're going to get the run. Vesselwoda gets on the gas, trying to catch up to the likes of Gerard Pretorius, who immediately comes past, clearing Henry Platt, who's just come out of the pit lane and now will be looking to try and unlap himself. But Henry Platt, who leads out, well, who's second, he's not leading out. It was Jason Farmer who got the jump into the pit lane. So Platt, who went in a little bit later, put on a new set of tires. That was the big call. Platt put on tires. Krobler put on tires. Jason Farmer, however, stopped for 9 seconds in the box. He did a splash and dash. So Jason Farmer going the long game here on his single set of tires to see if it's going to help him out. And with that undercut on the pit stop, he absolutely put a monster gap between himself and Platt. 15.5 seconds. A crucial run to try and move up in the championship and ultimately to see what he can do. This is going to be an interesting race to see if Jason Farmer can hold that pace. So it was a 2:01.6 on the last lap. He's going to have to try and maintain that into a 1:41 if he wishes to stay relevant into the fight. Jack Darts and Kieran Harris continue on their drive as we down to 26 cars left out on circuit. 33 started here at Imola, but it's been ticking all the boxes through, trying to find that little bit of time, and ultimately a few drivers running into a bit of a problem. Jason Farmer dives into the box. He double stacked it on this one. Previous lap, he went into the pits. Now he finds himself yet again as Henry Platt, Bagel Krobler, and Sean Lerrero come on through. Jason Farmer opting to get his final pit stop out of the way, and taking a look at it, Jason Farmer is putting on a new set of tires. So he did a splash and dash, putting on a new set of tires, dropping down the order. He would be in 8th position at the moment and still finding a little bit of time out there. He's got a lot of hard work ahead of him, but still remains in the top 5. Never mind, as Rick Thomas clears on through and says, not going to happen, buddy. Immediately Farmer exits pit lane. He's going to have to keep on the button just a little bit longer. You can see that pit board out ahead, that 50 kilometers an hour. Just what is absolutely mandatory before you get onto the gas and start opening up. Jason Farmer finds himself now in 10th position, trying to see if he can make it work here tonight. Ultimately, this is going to be a run, a battle and a half, and as Jack Darts finding against Kieran Harris, not an easy state of affairs to go and fight on that little bit more. Mike LaRue continues on after his receiving of a stop-go 30-second penalty. Try to get those early pit stops done and dusted. Unfortunately, finds himself in 24th position and will be going, what do I need to do to make it work? What do I need to do to just score a couple of more points in the championship to ultimately stay in for the fight? Jack Darts, however, in the McLaren, giving it everything he can. The 720S GT3 going and putting in top performance, down on the brakes, down the gears he goes, hooks it into the left-hander, trying to get that run out of the corner with Kieran Harris just within arm's reach. He's just getting a little bit of cross-armed on the way through the rear not as complacent as he would like it to be, and unfortunately, that's going and costing him a bit of time. But Jack needing to really knuckle down to make it work to get past Kieran Harris, who holds on to second place in class. Michael Schultz has managed to open up a 2.7 second gap to the two of them and will be more than happy to leave them fighting out. Jared Bakum fighting up against Jason Farmer. Now this is going to be an interesting call as Bakum has completed all these pit stops, so has Farmer. So these two are fighting right down to the line. They're going to have to push as hard as possible to gain some time back after they pit stops. Bit of a risky call coming in for Jason Farmer with that double stack pit stop coming into play, but managing to move up into the top 10 is not too bad. However, Jared will be laying in the pressure. He will be trying to also feed a bit of information to Bego Frobler further up the road. And I do know Bego Frobler does sit in the same radio call as Henry Platt. So Henry Platt will also be receiving some of that crucial information of where exactly the drivers are and what exactly is happening. Sullivan into the pits as he will park that 35. McLaren into the pits, get himself sorted out and look to head back out onto the track, hoping that he could try and pull it back into the top 20. A solid debut on his part. A few whoops moments, but has turned out to be a solid run. Ron Heineke trying his best up against Chris Biermeister as the two battle out. Chris trying to keep a little bit of momentum here and keep it consistent in pace. Has got Kerry Duplessis 3.6 seconds up the road. You know, as soon as he dives into the pits, it's a negative that's going to throw him down the order, as everyone behind him, except for Christian Zetzman, has completed their pit stops. So any pit stop now means that you're going to fall down the order. You're going to have to try and see if you can just open up some room, and the closest car to you, well, you know you're going to lose out on that one. You're going to land up getting taken further back. And I like what Derek's saying there. Teamwork is definitely what's going to be the plan. And as the old saying goes, Derek, teamwork makes the dream work. And exactly what's being done there. Having that little bit of information out on the circuit is absolutely crucial. And you can be sure that Jason Farmer for the Griffin Sim Racing team will be feeling exactly the same. Getting his bit of information from multiple drivers located all around the circuit. They are not bunched together. They are located in different parts of the track to give understandings of where the traffic is and where can they make up or lose time. Critical calls coming into play, and that little bit of a spotter in the ears, despite it being your competition, just having that little bit of a, don't worry, we're over here, this is what's happening, this is who's pitting and who's moving forward, does most certainly make the race quite dynamic over the radio, and ultimately is able to push each of the drivers through. Top three, Michael Schultz, Harris and Jack Darts fight out for the Pro-Am field, with Jack Darts finding no way to clear on past Kieran Harris at this stage, but will ultimately be giving it everything he can. Michael Schultz holds on to the lead of the class, while Henry Platt, Bego Frobler and Sean Larrera hold on to the top three of the top running pros. Last lap being the fastest, well, the best lap time was set as a 141.4, but Henry Platt did set the fastest lap time after the first pit stop of a 141.7. So going and really showing the second stint has got a bit of strength to it. He's going to be ultimately keeping in for the run. Mike LaRue hoping to get the bit of charge as he's right onto the back of Christian Zetzman, looking to see if he can filter his way through the VXR Aston Martin V8 AMR. Continues to try and find that little bit of time. Gonna strike like a viper, trying to see where he can go, but it is going to be the Mustang galloping and kicking in, absolutely holding the ground. Well, for Christian Zetzman, keeping a solid drive at the moment is exactly what he needs to do to make it work here tonight. For Mike LaRue, it's going to be yet another race he'll want to go and just put off to one side, not quite turning into the way he wanted it. From a solid qualifying to the race falling apart at the seams, he still circulates out in the 23rd position, a little bit further down, second last of everyone in his class, and unfortunately finds himself now trying to battle at the back of the pack. Christian Zetzman getting a little bit of a Evo as Mike tries to keep close, utilizes a bit of a side draft, getting very, very close to one another. A bit of a old school move, the side draft coming into play to pull you a little bit forward. Late on the brakes, he does come over the nose of Christian Zetzman just to try and create a bit of a block pass. Does get it done. You can be sure Zetzman will not be too keen on that one. Kieran Harris going and managing to get an easy run as Jack Darts hitting every curb on the way to check if he's shaken all the fillings out of his teeth as yet. Still hasn't got it all out, so now needs to go right back onto the attack as he lost 0.2 of a second to Kieran Harris, who holds on to the lead for the Pro-Am field. Henry Platt, Bego Krubler, Sean Herrera still hold on to the top for the pros and still have a significant gap between one another. 7 seconds separate Henry Platt and Bego Krubler. 7 seconds separate Bego Krubler and Sean Herrera. But they all still need to pit. Our top 9 of the drivers still need to get their way into the pits, get it sorted out, and continue on with the race. Kerry Duplessis and Chris Biermester needing to get their pit stops done and dusted, with Christian Zetzman going and finding out he needs to get his last one done. With 26 minutes remaining, these drivers having to think about crucial moments. Where exactly is it going to help out? How are they going to move forward? And where is the time going to be for them? This is all just questions, waiting for the answers, waiting to see what's going to be the big game plan here. Will the undercut work? Will the overcut work? Well, Jason Farmer and Jared McComb, they went completely low with it as Zetzman comes into the pits. Farmer and Jared find themselves going the undercut. They are committed to the cause and they're going to have to make it work to move up through the order. Platt, Krobler, Lorero, Michael Schultz, Kieran Harris, Jack Dart, Johan Verveers, and John Verveers, Rick Thomas, Johan Verveers. Riding up the Verveers family in for the bit of fun there. We just get a little bit confused when it comes to the Jays. As take a look out in the virtual grandstands, a bit of excitement, a bit of cheers coming in from Derek McComb, from Ludwig, Antonio Gamble, Crazy Stunts, Tinas Puerta coming in as well. And a shout out to the iRacing drivers from RaceFace.Pro. They're going and doing the qualifiers this coming Friday, Saturday and Sunday for the Tri-Nations to see which of the top 10 will represent South Africa in the Tri-Nations Cup. Been there last year, was a ton of fun, but now the competition stacked up in South Africa. I think we got a chance to, well, we came home with the bronze. I'm sure we can come home with the gold. But back to the racing here for the EG Evolved Simulator Rigs GT3 Championship for Season 27. EG going and really jumping on board, really putting their name behind the shows and making sure that this is going to be a solid run up and down through the field. And so far, it has been a great one. You do not have to register. It will be in the time trials. I'll let you know about that, tennis, and I'll chat off air. Feel free to shoot me a message on WhatsApp or out on Discord. Harris and Darts now continue that little bit of a run, trying to move on forward. Jack Darts in the slipstream, trying to see if he can pull himself a little bit closer. Michael Schultz now getting drawn in. Schultz has definitely come off the power. Last lap time, a 142.577. Kieran Harris, a 142.525. And Jack Darts, a 142.3 on that last lap. And unfortunately for Michael Schultz, I think the tyres starting to find their limit. And now it's just drawn all three back towards one another. Rick Thomas down into the pit lane. And it's going to be an absolute monster of a run to see how the drivers are going to keep it all together. Jared McComb and Jason Farmer still continue out their fight. Not able to gain the position as yet, as they still need to get past the Verveers family, who run 8th and 7th overall. They still need to get those final pit stops in, but they are sitting 10 seconds ahead of Jason Farmer, and with the likes of Johan Verveers 17 seconds adrift from Jean Verveers, it's going to make life a little bit more interesting, and ultimately it's going to come down to who can move forward, who's going to be able to keep in that slipstream and pull themselves a bit longer. as we do see Jack Darts getting a little bit more aggressive. He is trying to look for an opportune moment to get on by, diving down on the brakes, down to first gear, hooks it onto the left, gets right back onto the drive, really trying to give it everything he can, and ultimately going to battle it out through in the slipstream. You could just see Michael Schultz up ahead, but there's not a lot of time left on the board for these drivers. 33 laps in, 22 minutes to go, and still we sit with our top 8 needing to pit, and 11th and 13th needing to do their final pit stops in this race. 33 cars started, and Imola has been picking up spares left, right and centre for quite a number of drivers, not able to see it through to the wire. Some in more crucial cases, as Herman Wittner, who was a disconnect, finds himself at the bottom of the field, still keeps on going. I tip my hat to you, but he will now look in the rearview mirror to see Mike LaRue trying to close up the gap. Mike LaRue in 21st position after a nightmare second half to this race, finds himself now just trying to pick up the pieces of what's gone on, see if he can try and draw himself a little bit closer, as our top 3 of the Pro-Am now find themselves in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation, namely Michael Schultz of the Hydraulis Engineering team, as you can see, giving it everything he can. That sun coming off and shining bright here at Imola, and everyone hoping to get that solid run. Schultz will be trying his absolute best to hold on to the lead of the race, but it's going to come down to a crucial pit stop to try and move forward. However, Kieran Harris has an opportunity to try and stay in for the fight as well. Jack Darts in third. As Kieran pulls into the pits, he gets it done and dusted, leaving Michael Schultz and Jack Darts to go out a little bit longer. They're going to try and stretch open the gap a bit more. Terry Duplessis catching up to Ruan Heineke as they battle on. Jared Bakum battling out against Jason Farmer, going a little bit further into the race. So quite a few little bits happening out here in Imola, and out here for the ACC GT3 Championship Season 27. Second last season for the year, and possibly the second last season of ACC here at RaceFace.Pro, wrapping up a bit of an end of an era for drivers. Harris now leaving pit lane, falling down to 10th position as Farmer and Jared able to move up through the order. The Fears up to 6th and 7th now, continue on a little bit longer. Harris hoping to get out, but Terry Duplessis getting the pass on him, still needs to get that pit stop done and dusted, will start to fall down. However, it will be Kieran Harris who holds on to the first of those that have pitted in the Pro-Am field. So he's trying everything he can for the Midnight Racing, trying to push out a little bit harder, trying to see if it's going to help him out on circuit. Chris Griff, however, into a fight with the debut driver, Sullivan, going and giving it everything he can to really keep the drive. Nose to tail between the two, they have not gone and broken apart. Jeremy Coombe and Jason Farmer find themselves together. Kerry Duplessis and Ruan Heineke. Chris Heineke and Rick Thomas continue their fight, and Jack Darts and Michael Schultz yet again gonna go one extra lap. They're gonna try and sink this through as far as possible and taking on the gamble. 35 laps for the drivers as they go on that a little bit longer to try and see what they can do. It's been quite a long stint for the drivers. Sean Herrera actually running the longest since his last pit stop, 24 minutes and 27 seconds. Michael Schultz seeing with the same at 24 minutes in this second stint. Well, hoping that it's going to work out for him. Henry Platt went in a little bit earlier. Bago Krobler holds on second, but it is going to be Jason Farmer in that 8th position now, trying to find a bit of time. 9 seconds away from the Fifiers family, and will be thinking, right, what do I need to do to catch up to Jan Fifiers, who's got 16 seconds away. Just that little bit of opening in the gaps is helping out the drivers. And now we switch over from just outright speed and who can push out a little bit harder. Many of the drivers are fighting against going into autopilot mode. And when we talk about autopilot mode, we talk about just you've been around the track, you've memorized the circuit, you know Turn 1, you go left. Turn 2, you go right. You dive onto the straight, short left. You down into the next corner, left, right. Continue on, hairpin left. You get caught into just stuck in a bit of a loop. And by doing that, you actually lose track of time. You lose track of your competition. Sometimes you actually lose track of how many times you're getting onto the throttle early or late. So you will see mistakes start to creep in, especially this late into the race. Understeer and oversteer will be a factor as tires start to fade away, the tanks are getting lighter, drivers are getting more worn out. And also, once you've hit that autopilot mode, you suddenly now just stop pushing too hard. Or for others, it's completely the wrong direction where they just land up pushing all the way through and unfortunately can overdrive the car, finding themselves into the weeds. Something we've seen in the past, and it can quite easily happen to any driver out there for both Pro and Pro-Am here in the server. We also got our Gold and Am that are running in a server 2. So if you want to come and race here at RaceFace.Pro, do come across to SimGrid and take a look for RaceFace.Pro, or find us on Discord as well. All links below in the description. Jack Darts and Michael Schultz having a go at one another, and it's going to be Jack giving it everything he can to see where he can move on forward. Jack hoping that he could get it past Michael Schultz. Good to see Michael after returning from a little bit of a hiatus in the world of ACC. Hasn't lost a step and continues to keep a solid drive. He's looking to try and take his first championship here in RaceFace.Pro. It's not going to be the easiest of runs, but if he can keep a solid run up through the order, if he can keep ahead of Kieran Harris, who holds on to 4th place at the moment behind Kerry Duplessis, well, it's a good haul of points to take away from Imola for the second half of the championship. There's 8 rounds that the drivers are competing, each round with an hour and 20 minutes worth of racing, each round needing 2 mandatory pit stops, and each round testing the drivers that little bit further. And so far, everyone trying to go that little bit longer. Our top 7 drivers ticking off the board, trying to see how far they can go into this race without costing too much time. Jack Darts peered for the inside line, but second guessed it, rather to hold back and see if he could get a better run on Michael Schultz. Just sitting in the mirrors there, not finding a bit of time to move on forward, and most certainly will be taking a bit of frustration as Schultz not going and losing that little bit of drive. We jump on the rear board of him again, and Michael wanting once again, keeping it clean, keeps it on the power and feeds it up the hill, not to lose that traction. The Porsche incredibly quick in and out through corners, but can be rather finicky. It can be one of these cars that either gives you a big hug, or it will be the first one to give you a PK across the face, reminding you of your place. Well, that's not going to be an easy thing for Michael Schultz to deal with as that tank gets lighter and lighter and the tires start to get overused. Michael Schultz hoping to go a little bit long into this race. Jack Darts right onto the back of him will be trying to see what he can do. Gianluca Pomarosa up ahead. We'll see these two making up a little bit of time. We'll look on the relative, and also you can be sure going back on the radio to Kieran Harris and saying, right, I'm heading into the final 3 corners and I've got the front 2 on my tail. What's the game plan here? You're going to keep pushing to get to me, or am I going to keep pushing on my racing line? Now, blue flags will be out, which means the driver doesn't have to jump out of the racing line. He can maintain his racing line and racing pace. He just can't fight the cars going past him. It's up to the faster cars to clear him safely. And at the moment, both drivers going and throwing hammer and tongs towards one another. As Schultz gets it wrong, he gets a snap, he catches a car. Jack Darts is going to be okay, and oh, Schultz couldn't hold it till the end. He tried his best, he tried his might, but unfortunately, it was not to be the case. He finds himself off track. Leclerc's son finds himself rotated around as well in this race, and not turning into an easy time. And we jump on board with Leclerc into the corner. The rear snaps out, counter steers, and unfortunately finds himself pointing in the wrong direction, looking at the field, and a near miss from Sean Herrero there as he had to take evasive maneuvers. So Sean Herrero going to be definitely taking a deep breath on that one as he saw around the corner, all of a sudden a Ferrari in the way. Gerard Pretorius also would have been an oh boy, and before he could even get the second word out, Loureiro had to try and avoid nearly having a solid head-on into the accident. 39 laps in. Drivers still pushing, trying to find their time. Henry Platt, Bego Krobler, Sean Loureiro, all going a little bit longer into the race. Jack Darts will be the next one to think about his pit stop. And now that he's clear of Michael Schultz by nearly 14 seconds, John Fears holds on to that 5th place and will be trying to see, right, if I get a splash and dash, how much time is it going to cost me? Well, Jack Dart's going to go that little bit longer. But Fears is going to come around and see his opportunity, whether he's going to go into the pits, chooses not to. And now with 11 minutes and 40 seconds to go, a bit of an interesting gamble coming into play. Drivers going that little bit longer in this race, ultimately seeing how far they can really make it work. Chris Heineke and Rick Thomas continue the battle between one another. The two teammates now crossing swords for that top 15, with Rick Thomas out there in the McLaren, keeping ahead of Chris Heineke. Sorry, it's not two teammates. Griffith Sim Racing, Chris Heineke, just in black and red, which oh so looks familiar to that black and red out on track. And if you add it to Chris Beermister's car, take a look, you can see the front of the cars looking very, very similar. And I always land up getting that one a bit cross-eyed. Apologies to both the Extreme and to the Griffin Sim Racing on getting that little bit of a hiccup done. But maybe I need to go back to Specsavers, grab some glasses and get myself going. Jack Darts trying to move on forward. Gianluca says no problem, mine's out the way, allows a lot of room for that pass to happen. And now Jack continues on his drive. Gianluca keeping an eye on everything, keeps an eye on what he can do, as Mike LaRue now trying to catch up to Vessel Loader. Vessel holds on to the top 20. Mike needing to jump up. He's aiming to catch up to Leclerc Besson further up the field to try and bring back some points into this championship. That little bit more of a drive to really make it work, as Herman Webner finds himself back into pit lane, getting his car sorted out. Yet again, not having an easy time out there, trying to get those pit stops done and dusted. And after the disconnect, it just has spiraled all out of control. Chris Heineke trying to move on to Rick Thomas as they fight out for 15th and 16th. They'll find in the rearview mirror Henry Platt making his way up through the order. Now, Henry is not going to be one to lose out too much time here. He knows how crucial the next 9 minutes and 35 seconds need to be to keep ahead of Bego Krobler and Sean Loureiro, Jack Darts, John Fears, Michael Schultz, and also Johan Fears, all trying to move forward. Jason Farmer in that 8th position has managed to break away from Jabrick Coombe by 2.5 seconds, which means Jason Farmer has managed to shake off that spotter. Chris Beermister pulls into the pits, completes his pit stops, as Ferry Duplessis going to continue to go long. Henry Platt going to go a little bit longer. Bego Krobler, is he going to try to get in the pits? No, not even a thought, not even a query to drive into the pits. He's going to continue on. Will Sean Loureiro take up the opportunity to go for an undercut here, or is he going to try to go that little bit longer? Exits and continues on by, going to see what he can do. Jack Darts nailing it down. Hill will head to the final final 3 corners, because it's 2 left-handers followed by 1 right-hander, but the pit lane is just before the right-hander for turn 19. So he exits out turn 18, looks towards the pit lane, opts not to go, seeing that there's no option just as yet. They're going to run it down to the wire. Henry Platt has done this once before, that's worked out, and managed to move him up through the order. He's going to try it yet again to go that little bit longer into the race, to try and see if he can keep a solid run. Vesselwoda and Mike LaRue changing our places. LaRue up into 19th as the Kluberson holds on for that 18th position. Mike LaRue unable to shake Vesselwoda from that AMG Mercedes, and will be just having a lot of pressure put on to him. So Mike in the Aston Martin V8 AMR, the 2019 chassis, continues to try and hold its line up against the best. He's just gone into the top 20, looking for a top 15 now, as he needs to try get past the Kluberson and then get onto the attack for the Griffin Sim Racing machine a little bit further up the road. Platt, yet again, coming across the line. He's now managed to make up a little bit of time as he does see Chris Heidecker just ahead of him. That sunset becoming more of an issue for the drivers as it will come straight in through the front windscreen, nailing him in the eyes and also obscuring those brake markers. So you're having to be very cautious through the corners. You're having to rely a lot on muscle memory to get it right. And I know it sounds weird of light catching you on a screen, but when you start to look at how bright it goes and makes it, a lot of drivers do prefer to race in darker conditions versus driving with lights on. Now I'm talking about in their actual sim space. So the rigs themselves might have lighting, they might have ambient lighting, or no lighting at all. Most of the drivers here in South Africa drive around with no lighting. They try and focus solely on what is on in front of them without having any of the frustrations. And ultimately, a bright screen does tend to cause a little bit of eye strain coming into play. So a sunset like this does make life a little more difficult, as we do see Michael Schultz into the pits, and it will be the likes of Jean Prefiers diving into the pits as well. Farmer gains another 2 positions and sets his eyes forward. Jack Darts will keep an eye on Michael Schultz as Harry Duplessis next to dive into the pits, and here comes Kieran Harris trying to close down the gap. If Schultz is putting on a set of tires here, he's in for a world of trouble, as here comes Harris gunning it down. Harris hoping to take up second, and he does. He takes over second place. Michael Schultz, only just rolling out of the pits now, was stopped in the box for a fair chunk of time, and unfortunately has cost himself a little bit of a run. 5 seconds to go and put in fuel, but a long trundle down pit lane of 47 seconds has ultimately cost him. But yeah, Bego Krobler into the pits for lap 43 as Henry Platt continues to go along. Sean Lerero is going to go a little bit longer as well. So an interesting call. Bego into the pits, hoping for the undercut, as they do see Kerry coming out of the pits and will be rejoining the race. He'll slip down the order behind Gerard Pretorius and Ulrich Diaga, but it is Sean Lerero and Platt who are going to go that little bit longer. Will Jack Darts follow the same? He does. So Jack Darts taking it down to the line. This is going to be a run of note for the drivers, and they cannot miss a step. They now need to be absolutely committed to the cause to move forward, as Bego Krobler will take up that 4th position and will hold 3rd currently over the pro field. Farmer, however, finds himself in 5th place, 16 seconds back from Bego Krobler, who has got that drive now to get going. And Bego was stopped for a splash and dash on that last one. 5 seconds to see if it's going to help him out in this race. Chris Bemmerstad finds himself into the wall. That is through the hairpin. Unfortunately, landing up, catching the wall. Slow as he tries to rejoin onto the circuit. He will have Bego Krobler coming and racing. Apologies. Bego Krobler races on by and keeps that solid run. Now, this is going to be crucial for the top 3. How much space have they managed to put between the drivers? Platt is 26 seconds ahead of Sean Lerero, and add on to the fact of 21 seconds from Lerero to Darts, that is now up to 40.7 seconds, which is roughly how long to trundle along the pit lane is going to be. Add on to Bego Krobler 8 seconds back from that. Henry Platt can comfortably pit and come out into the lead of the race. Sean Lerero, however, will be in for a world of trouble at the moment, because he will suddenly have Bego Krobler closing up the gap. Jack Darts pulls into the pits. He'll keep an eye out, and Kieran Harris, as this will be a battle for first in the Pro-Am field. Jochen Adair finds himself back up into 3rd place. Consistency is key in the race, and so far it's been exactly that. Michael Schultz, unfortunately, pulled the late gamble and finds himself at 135 down to 13th position, and will be scratching his head on narrowly missing out on a podium. Not exactly how he wanted the race to go, but still put in a stellar fight for the first half and going into the second half. Harry Duplessis, running into a bit of trouble out there and catches the wall. Let's take a quick look at what happened. So it was swinging over to the left-hander, changes the weight. Catch the curbing on the way through, and unfortunately threw himself hard into the wall. And that is going to be the Chronodulis Ferrari feeling a little bit of pain as Henry Platt dives into the pits. Loureiro coming down, 2 minutes and 10 seconds to go. This is going to be Loureiro's chance to dive into the pit lane, because I don't think he has enough time to do yet another lap. Lap 44, we'll see Platt and Loureiro dive into the pits, and we'll see Bego Krobler and Jason Farmer trying to really dial it up. Jack Darts onto the back of Kieran Harris as the two follow through, trying to keep the pressure on. Who is going to have that little bit more momentum between them as the fight for the top in both classes continue to go and boil over into the next 1 minute and 30 seconds of this race. Platt out in first. He managed to get the run, but Bego Krobler looking to clear past as Loureiro is not out of the pit lane as yet. Immediately, Bego gets that pass. He's through. Loureiro down to third. Is Farmer too far away back? I think he is. Loureiro exiting pit lane. Farmer is not going to have an easy run here. Loureiro will just come slightly ahead. And unfortunately for Jason Farmer, he tried his might. He only just gets on as Loureiro gave a little bit off the gas there. Allowed Farmer through and continued on the race. So a bit of an interesting call coming in for the Griffin Sim Racing team to try and move forward. However, it is going to be a race for first in the Pro-Am. It's the likes of Harris and Darts pushing forward as Mike LaRue, unfortunately, to add to the woes here at Imola. A stop-go 30-second earlier, a drive-through now for track limits exceeded, and the Aston Martin driver will be extremely frustrated on that one. He was trying to get past the likes of Leclerc. He will find himself doing a drive-through and unfortunately trundling down the order in overall position, but will finish ahead of Herman Whitner. So come at the back of the pro field. Chris Heineke getting the run around the outside as Rick Thomas defends the line. The two still brawling out, keeping the fight alive and trying to see what they can do to go a little bit further. Henry Platt coming out of the final corner. It's a long right-hander to make it work. 45 laps is done and comes across the line. Moscow Motorsport, Henry Platt takes the victory here at Imola for round 4 of the EG Evolved GT3 Championship. Bego Krobler will take second. Sean Loureiro will finish third as Jason Farmer made a mistake, falls down the order. Farmer down into fifth. Loureiro, Jared Bakum and Farmer will round out the pack. Ruan Heineke will finish up in sixth. Farmer, with all that last little run, unfortunately could not get it to the line ahead of Sean Loureiro. Now for the lead of the Pro-Am, it's going to be Harris ahead of Darts for now, but can they keep that momentum going? Round the final corner, aiming to the line. Kieran Harris takes a win here for round 4 in the Pro-Am field. Right on the back of him, 0.1 of a second. Jack Darts takes second place. Jaco Nadir finds himself up into third on a stellar effort. What a drive. What a run. Chris Heineke saying a well done to Rick Thomas for the fight they had between one another. And Rick Thomas managing to get the upper hand on that battle. Fears comes across the line. Ulrich de Jager will be next to come through. Gerard Pretorius, Mike LaRue going and just getting caught out with the drive-through penalty. Will throw down the order. And Leclerc-Besson will ultimately take that position away from him. What a drive. What a race as we get the remaining drivers across the line. Man, oh man, coming into this round, the championship points were tight, but now we get to see how it all comes apart, and everyone making a phenomenal race here at Imola. For round 4 of the championship, we got to see some great battles, some great upsets, and ultimately everyone giving it that hard push to the line. As we start getting our highlights ready, we'll wait to get some of the drivers to get an idea on how their race went here tonight and who exactly thought they would finish up on top. This has been a manic run for all competitors looking to move forward, and a solid run through it all. And you can see the starting off with a little bit of argy-bargy between Farmer and Bego Krobler coming out of turn 3, but they were able to carry on the race. Kieran Harris holding on to that top 5 quite some time, and the Pro-Am driver showing off what he can do to really make it work here tonight. So we can't wait to have a chat to our Pro-Am driver, who once again picks up yet another win. Coming into the round, was more than ahead of the pack, now finds himself once again going and having a stellar time. That being said, we're going to have a chat to the drivers, starting off with Kieran Harris, our winner of the Pro-Am out in the BMW. Kieran, welcome to the commentary box, and what a race out there. Managing to take the win in your class as a Pro-Am driver, how are you feeling? Well, with that being said, take us through the race. It looked rather busy at the start, clean for the most part, but most certainly very difficult if you got trapped at the top or even in the middle. That being said, Imola behind us and looking forward to round 25. Round 5, how are you feeling for this race? And apologies, hold on. We just getting some audio that's not coming through. Don't worry, guys. We'll fix that up right now. There we go. Jack Darts going and talking about a difficult race out there and going and chatting about, well, some of the hard racing that he got to have, and also the pit stop coming to play. Jack, with your qualifying, did you expect, Kieran, did you expect to finish out your qualifying into the top 5? You're making it consistent. Last week you did it. This week, same thing.
I didn't think that I'd make it to the top 5 this week. I didn't have as much time to practice as I thought I did, but, well, as I would have liked to, but managed to get one clean lap in during qualifying. That was good enough to put me up near the sharp end of the grid.
A solid run nonetheless. But with that being said, how are you feeling for the championship? Are you feeling a little bit more excited, a little bit more put together, or do you feel that there's still a long way to go for the drivers to go and see if you can fight your way through?
Yeah, I think there's still, 4 rounds left. I think that there's a lot to work for moving forward. The competition's starting to heat up a bit with Darts and Schultz. They seem to be getting into their stride now. Definitely a much more competitive race in Pro-Am this week than last week.
Absolutely, most certainly the case. Well, with that being said, you've taken the victory here in the Pro-Am field. You managed to push your way up in towards the top 10 and put on a stellar show. Anything you want to say to our partner, EG Evolve, to all the competitors and teams out on the circuit, to all your race fans that have been cheering on in the background, seeing an incredible race?
Yeah, as always, thanks to all the sponsors, EG Evolved and the rest of the and for RaceFace for putting on this event, and shout out to my team because I didn't have a lot of time to practice this week. My teammate Jean-Luca made a stellar setup this week that put me pole in Pro-Am and second row of the grid overall, and then took me to a win in the race. So thanks to him. Yeah, and thanks to all my mates for watching. You know, they always want a shout out. There you go.
A stellar one, and we look forward to seeing you at round 5 for some incredible racing. What a stellar job, and we look forward to seeing what can happen. Maybe, possibly, an overall top 3 on the cards for you.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. If I carry on at this rate, I think it's looking good for that.
Well, we look forward to seeing it. Kieran Harris taking the win for the Midnight Racing and finds himself winning out here tonight. A solid run on his part. And what an incredible run to make it happen. But with that being said, we're going to be going and bringing in our next driver, also in the Pro-Am field, Jack Darts, to come and have a chat to us. Jack, welcome to the commentary box, and what a race for you out on the circuit here tonight. A back and forth battle right down to the wire, 0.1 of a second as you came across the line. How are you feeling after the race at Imola?
Oh, that was a bit unexpected for me. It's been a bit of a rough season so far, but it seemed to come together today. And yeah, that was a very close one at the end. One or two less mistakes on that last stint, and I might have had him, but he had the pace at the end.
Well, that being said, taking a look during the race, your qualifying was great. The race, you were having a good, solid bit of pace out there. What was the game plan for the pit stop strategy here at Imola, since it's so crucial to be able to move up through the field?
It was just to keep those lap times as low as possible. Just keep pumping them in, and then just don't pit until I have to. I didn't want to pit until the last lap, but it was getting to the point where I thought I might run out of fuel, but you managed to get there in the end.
That E for enough, not E for empty, coming into play.
Exactly.
With that being said, how confident are you feeling for the second half of the championship now? Having to push that a little bit harder, seeing that you're in for the fight in the top 10, trying to go for the overall win. What's your game plan heading into round 5?
Just keep it consistent at this point. I messed up too much at the start, and now I just need as many points as I can get, bringing it to the end. Luckily, next race is a bit of a home race for me, being in Australia, so hopefully I can use that and push myself forward with one more step.
Well, it's going to be an exciting one. It's going to be a great one. Before we let you go to enjoy the celebration, anything you want to say to our title sponsor, EG Evolve, to all the drivers out on the grid that share the track with you, also to the teams out there that were cheering on, but most importantly, to everyone watching out on the virtual grandstands.
Big thank you for everyone who puts this on and comes to watch it. ACC is a bit quiet at the moment, but it's always fun on a Thursday to have this. And big old what's his name? Congratulations to Kieran. That was a bit of a battle at the end, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you again for everyone who turns up.
Absolutely wonderful stuff. A stellar drive on your part. Congratulations on coming up second place and a good haul of points for the championship. We look forward to having a chat to you coming next week.
Thank you very much.
Jack Darts having a stellar run, comes second place in the Pro-Am, and what a drive from him. But let's bring up a driver that managed to capture second place in the Pros. Let's have a chat to Bago Krobler. Bago, welcome to the commentary box, and my oh my, the pit stops coming into play yet again. A very late call for your part. What was the game plan coming into this race after, well, seeing the battle at Hungaroring and how it all turned out there? It seemed like you came in with a different idea, a different strategy to move on forward, and a good solid pace to try and fight out for the lead.
How's it, Stephen? Yeah, no, it was good. Again, got a bit lucky because Jason had a wheel failure there right at the end. So not sure how close he would have been if he didn't have issues, but it was good. I knew it was going to be tough because the temp's high again, and the Lambo rear tires just don't work in these temps. So I knew it was going to be a tough race, but the plan was just to sort of hopefully extend the gap in the championship to Jason, and we managed to do that, so that's good. And yeah, as far as the strategy goes, it was just Jared was right behind Jason because they'd both done their second stops already while I was still out, so Jared was just giving me every lap, giving me Jason's lap times and we sort of planned that if maybe 2 or 3 laps in a row he's quicker than me, then I'm gonna box to cover him off. But it didn't come to that, so I could sort of pit when Jared let me know there's no traffic ahead of them. So yeah, it worked out nicely.
With that being said, the championship now on the way, second half of the season. You're leading out the championship. You're putting some points in to try and open up the gap. But there's still a possibility of the drivers catching up to you. I mean, Jason Farmer is not too far behind. Herman Wepner had a bit of a terrible race, but Henry Platt starting to take away those wins from you. How are you feeling for the second half of the championship, knowing that you're starting to lose some of that leeway that you would usually go and fight out for?
Yeah, I'm still feeling good about it. Jason, obviously the closest at the moment, so extending the gap to him is good. It was what we planned for. Henry's still a way back, but yeah, he's racking up the points thick and fast now, so we'll need to keep an eye on him. And then next week, obviously, going to Bathurst, where literally anything can and probably will happen. So I'll feel a lot better about it if I get a good result again next week.
Well, it's going to be a great one. It's going to be an exciting one. And before we let you go to enjoy the celebrations, taking home the silver here tonight in the pro field, anything you would like to say to our title sponsor, EG Evolve, to the competitors out on the track that you got to race side by side with, and a little bit door to door heading into turn 1, as we saw with yourself and Jason Farmer. But most importantly, to the fans out in the virtual grandstands, cheering on and being a part of the show.
Yeah, Andres and the guys over at EG, thanks so much. We say this every week, but thanks to them for supporting RaceFace and helping us put on the show and run the league, and some exciting stuff happening over there as well. So you guys can go ahead and go check out their socials, especially if you're in that part of the world. Some exciting stuff happening there. And then everybody at RaceFace that makes everything possible week after week. You guys are legends, yourself included, Stephen. It's if you listen to other guys talk, RaceFace seems to be considered one of the most competitive leagues still around. So and there's a lot of work that goes into that. So thanks to everybody for that. And then the RG, me and Jason had a quick chat after the race, and it's all good. We sort of came out of there where we went in, so nothing lost, so no issues there. Some good hard racing. And then in the fans, I think tonight was the opening laps was definitely good. The fight with me and with Jason was really good that first stint, so hopefully that was enjoyable. And then next week, obviously, Bathurst, so definitely come and watch that one, because there's just no way that Bathurst is ever a boring race. But and thanks to everybody that keep watching every week. It's amazing to see the support and the number of views we get on the streams and stuff. So thank you very much.
Absolutely incredible stuff, and well said, Bego. I'm glad that you shared insurance details between yourself and Jason Farmer for the dents in the doors, but it's good to see you sharing creative ideas of paintwork as well. But well done on the race, well done on second, and we look forward to seeing you out in Australia.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephen. Thanks so much.
There you go, Probler putting in a solid effort here tonight, but ultimately there can only be one winner overall, and that has to go to this man, Henry Platt, in the BMW, the Moscow Motorsport, going and taking a win here tonight. Henry, you're racking up those points, you're racking up the win, and making up time after a bit of a hard last round. Now, round 4, you take a win. Take us through the mental mindset to gearing up for this race, considering you got to drive through your last race that cost you the run to stand on the podium, to come into tonight qualifying on the front row. What was the whole plan, the strategy to move forward?
Look, last week was a bit of a fluke, to be honest. It was just a technical difficulty on my side, so I still drove well, so I had a lot of confidence coming into this one. I actually did not know that I was quick enough here. Apparently I am. I think the BMW likes the high temps as well, more than, let's say, the Lambo that Bego is driving, so that helps me as well. So if Bertus can keep the temps up, that would be great. But yeah, nice to get my first full points race in RaceFace since I've joined. I don't think I've ever won a race and got fastest lap, so that's pretty cool.
A solid race into it. Now, we've got to talk about the pit stop strategies coming into play, because yet again, you're going right to the end of the race. The second last lap, you'd be getting into the pits, getting that stop done and carrying on. Do you think at some point the luck's going to run out, or do you feel that is the optimum strategy moving forward?
No, that's the optimum strategy. It's pretty easy to see when you're not going to make another lap, so you just go in. I don't think it's a major risk. But yeah, last time it didn't work for me, because last time I got traffic every time I came out of the pits, but today it worked. I got really lucky at the start with, like, I instantly got clean air and some space to drive, where Baigo and Jason was like having an awesome battle. But yeah, it just let me get out in front, so that was good.
Well, with that being said, heading over to Australia for round 5. How are you feeling? Ready to take on Bathurst, the mountain that has been quite influential in the championships of the past, and you've been part of where the mountain has claimed not only your car, but a few others to go and try and see it through the end.
Yeah, I was just not quite near Baigo. Me and him seem to kill each other into the mountain every time. So, hopefully we can change that. But I actually enjoyed the mountain. I do quite well there. I think a lot of guys have big pace, but I mean, one mistake in the mountain and you're out. So I've got the consistency to just drive laps after laps without losing too much time and then putting damage on the car. So I'm pretty confident, actually. That's one that I was eyeing at the start of the season.
Well, an absolute stellar drive here at Imola, and the confidence heading into Bathurst. What better way to carry it through? But Henry, before we let you go, anything you'd like to say to everyone behind the scenes, to our partners and sponsors, to the drivers, the teams, and most importantly, to everyone out in the virtual grandstands?
Yeah, I'd like to say, actually, something that I never say, but EG Evolved, like, obviously they sponsored the league, but even before that, I think if anyone is watching and looking at some gear, like, you can't go wrong with those guys. I bought my stuff from them. I've bought a wheel from someone else, and they still fixed it for me. Like, if you want good service, go and support them like they support us. And then to all the admin, everyone doing all the work behind the scenes, and then you in front of the, well, technically on the radio. But thank you for all your effort and the awesome stream. I'm definitely going to go and watch it back now.
Absolutely incredible stuff. Thank you very much, Henry, and congratulations on your win here tonight. We look forward to seeing you next week at Bathurst.
Cheers, man. Thanks, Steven.
Henry Platt of Moscow Motorsport took the win here tonight, and what a stellar drive it was. Folks, it's been an incredible time here at Imola, but we say farewell to Italy, and we look forward to heading over down under to Australia as we head out to Bathurst. It is going to be it's going to be a crazy one, and the drivers going to be running on the knife's edge, seeing who's going to be able to move forward. That's on the 27th of August coming up, and you want to be a part of that show. It's going to be an incredible one, and it's going to be a fun one. And coming up this Sunday, we've got the Evolution Racing Academy. They've got round 4 at Imola. Definitely not to be missed. 7 o'clock BST, 8 o'clock South African time, out on the Evolution Racing Academy Discord. You can join up and get to race against some of the Europeans' finest, along teaming up with our South Africans that go and race week after week. Not to go and take away the fact that we've still got the incredible ERA and RaceFace combined enduro. It's a 6-hour round Bathurst on the 29th of August. You do not want to miss out this chance to go and see some incredible racing, be part of a incredibly tight championship, and also get to race with your friends. Who can survive the mountain? Who can battle their way back from the pack? Well, you're going to have to join in. You're going to have to find out and be part of the show. But folks, make sure you hit the subscribe button along with the bell notification icon. Leave a like and let us know what was your favorite part of the race and what do you expect is going to happen at the mountain. From myself, Stephen Koenig, I'd like to say thank you very much to our title sponsor, EG Evolve Simulator Rigs. If you're looking for the best simulator gear, whether you're into flight, space flight, normal flying, racing, driving, and soon, with Monza going and unveiling their new handlebars and that coming for motorbikes, well, you get to try and simulate on bikes as well. They've got you covered with everything you need from all price points, whether you're looking to go the Max Verstappen insane route, or you're going to be the average Joe, having something you completely enjoy. They got you covered at EG Evolve. Big thank you to all our admin behind the scenes here at RaceFace.Pro, and a big thank you to all the teams and drivers out on the track for an incredible performance, a solid run right the way through, and we can't wait to see how it all pans out heading over to Australia. But folks, that's the end. As all shows must have an end, the curtains will fall. But we always say the famous words, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, everybody.